last time you read a great book out loud in your homeschool? This is a story of an adventure that happened in Narnia and Calormen and the lands between, in the Golden Age, when Peter was High King in Narnia and his brother and his two sisters were king and queens under him. Welcome to Homeschool University, where life meets learning. I'm Diana Applegate, and today we're talking about the importance, the value of reading aloud regularly in your homeschool. So if you're like most people, when you think about reading aloud, you probably think of, bedtime stories and those cute oversized picture books, right? Ooh, this is not the right view of reading aloud. This is a false view, if you will. There are enormous benefits for all ages when it comes to reading aloud. As a matter of fact, reading aloud is a fabulous addition to your language arts curriculum. So enough about that. Let's dive into this really overlooked asset for your homeschool. So we're going to start with level 1. That would be those non-readers or at least non-fluent readers possibly learning to read. Now, for this stage, for read aloud, picture books are the bomb, right? I mean, you're going to have a lot of pictures for the very young non-reader, and as they get better, you're going to go to fewer pictures. But the illustrations are still important because this child needs the connection between the words on the page and what they are seeing. It helps them. So that leads me to the connections to language arts. Here we go. The first one is it's going to connect the child's mind between the symbols, the letters on the page, and the fact that those letters represent words, and those words tell the story. That's how you're going to make this connection. The child is going to be very quick to pick up on words if they're reading, sitting alongside you and looking at the book with you, obviously. They're going to pick up on words all by themselves. Like the, they're going to go, oh, I know that word, that's the, right? It's just making the connection. It also, reading aloud at this point, increases vocabulary exponentially, right? And also the skill that the child has when using language. Because now they're hearing complete sentence structure. They're hearing descriptive words. They're hearing words put together in ways that you might not do in ordinary conversation, day-to-day conversation, but yet still very important connections to make. Something else that comes out of reading aloud at this level, hello, a love of great books. If you want your child to grow up to be a reader, now is the time to really ignite that fire, to put down the spark in that heart, seriously. Something else that happens here at this level, there is an opportunity to build reading comprehension. Takes one additional step past the reading aloud, and that would be narration. Narration is something that certainly I have borrowed from Charlotte Mason, who I actually talked about quite a lot in my last video on teaching science. But basically, it's the idea that you're having the child not just listen to what you're telling them, but then tell it to you back in their own words. So when it comes to reading, you're going to read them a short passage and then say, what happened to the girl just now? And then the child's going to tell it back to you. By the way, at this age, narration can be either oral, spoken, they tell you what they saw, or you've got that super creative child and they're out there. You might want to have them draw you a picture of what they heard, right? However that works, but it definitely builds reading comprehension, the ability for the child to listen and actually then receive what they're hearing. So I'm going to give you some book suggestions now. In fact, I'm going to give you book suggestions at every level, but let's start with some level 1 read aloud suggestions. We're going to start with books for a very young non-reader. This has got to be my all-time favorite. January Brings the Snow. You'll be sick of this book long before your child is sick of it because all kids love it. It's got really simple little rhymes about the different seasons, but the kicker in this book is this little thing right here. On every page, there's a little fold out, right? Something that the child has to do to show the mouse family. What is the mouse family doing in this season, okay? Just a ton of fun, great read. Another favorite for the young non-reader would be Make Way for Ducklings. Hello, I fell in love with this book when I was a small child. That's how old this book is. Fabulous book. It's got these wonderful drawn illustrations, nothing too busy or too distracting, and this story that'll just warm your heart every single time you read it. Great, great book. Here's another one. The Madeline books. This one happens to be Madeline in America, but these are all a lot of fun. They give a perspective of someone who lives in a different culture. Number one, that's really fun. They've got just a few words on each page, these wonderful illustrations. I can't recommend the Madeline books highly enough. These are a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of books for maybe that child who is starting to read and is starting to be interested in books that have maybe a few less pictures and a few more words. Oh yeah, Beatrice Potter. Anything by Beatrice Potter. This happens to be her complete works, which I love, which is falling apart because it has been so well loved, not only in our homeschool, but I have read this book to countless other children, including, I used to be the story lady at one of our library branches. I read this book regularly. The great thing about Beatrice Potter is that she has some stories that are really longer, more complex, and some are quite short, but similar characters, always using the animals, and these charming illustrations. Who can't love illustrations like that? These are fabulous. There is no child who will not connect to Beatrice Potter. Great read aloud. Another great book for read aloud would be the Little Pair books. Again, these are wonderful because they have a different perspective. This is a little boy who lived in China a long time ago, as you can see by the age of the book. These are great stories. They have very simple illustrations. What I really like about this one is that your beginning reader can help you with some of the words in this book because it is fairly large print. The vocabulary is not too difficult. This is a great one to start drawing your child into the whole reading aloud thing. So there are some reading suggestions for level 1. Let's take a look at the benefits of reading aloud for the next stage up, the understanding level 2 kid. So here in level 2, these are your fluent readers, but that are still kind of in the story stage. They're not really ready to cross that bridge into the very, very thoughtful books, but definitely they enjoy a good story. And this is a great time to, in fact, make use of that. Give them stories that have some meat to them. Give them stories that are written by older authors, so they're extremely well written and engaging. This is not the time to bring out Captain Underpants, just saying. It's time for some great books. So, how do you connect with a language arts curriculum for this level? Well, the first thing that's going to happen, you're going to read aloud with them. You're going to share the reading. It's no longer you just reading. They're a fluent reader. They're going to share the reading with you. What this means, the big bonus is you can actually shoot for a book that's just at the very top of their reading level, okay? Maybe even slightly above it because you're sharing the reading. You read a page, they read a page, or even you read half a page, they read half a page, however that works out, right? But when you're doing that, it means they're already familiar with the characters in the story and the flow of the story, which means a lot of times they can figure out words in the story by context because they have something to work off of. This is not just a word on a flashcard. These are words in the context of a story, of a sentence, right? So this is a great time to boost reading levels. Something else you can do, just like in level 1, you're going to be increasing vocabulary and really building on those language usage skills. I mean, they're reading well-crafted sentences, again, words that they might not use commonly in everyday language. Bonus points, right? Now, here's one. Here's a benefit that you will not have thought of, I care to bet. But I'm going to give you some anecdotal evidence of this. Well-written books teach writing. That's right. But they have to be read aloud to teach writing. Now, I'm going to elaborate on this. I have been reading to my children pretty much since they were in the womb. I'm just a reader. I love books, so that was my thing. We always read aloud. When we got to the homeschool years, my children were still pretty young, but they were reading and writing. We were part of a homeschool co-op that had different topics that were presented every 3 or 4 weeks by a mom. Once in a while, those subjects would involve some writing. My kids would write something and all the moms would say, "Ooh, what writing curriculum are you using? Because your kids write so well." To which I would have to say, none. We haven't worked on that, which was true. But I started wondering, is there a connection between what we're reading aloud and writing skills? So then I met Andrew Pudewa at Homeschool Convention. Andrew Pudewa is a guy who runs and owns Institute for Excellence in Writing, IEW, whose products I love for teaching writing, which, by the way, we didn't actually use his products till we get to like 7th or 8th grade. But in any case, I asked him point blank at the conference, okay, is there a connection between reading aloud, good books, and writing skills? To which he was like, absolutely, no question. And here's the reason why. He explained it to me. When you are reading words on a page, it's easy to skip words or even to skip over mundane sentences. You're just kind of cruising through the language, especially as a fluent reader, right? However, when you're listening to the spoken word, when you're hearing a story read to you, you have to process every single word. And then you have to process it in the context of the sentence and the paragraph. Because otherwise, we've all done this. You're listening to someone talk and all of a sudden your mind wanders off and you're like, whoa, I just missed 4 sentences, right? So the connection that's made between hearing the words spoken out loud and your child's ability to process language well, hello, great benefit. Can't ask for more than that. But I'm going to top it with one more that you probably haven't thought of, and that is reading aloud with your child boosts public speaking confidence. Yes, it does. You're reading aloud from a book. Yes, you're in the context of your family, but you're still having to use your voice to project words. This gives you confidence that you can indeed do that. Have your child stand in the middle of the room once in a while and read. And yes, that is going to give them confidence for those times when they're at a town hall meeting, or, a local drain committee meeting. We have those here in Michigan, okay, where you need to speak up and say something in front of a group of people. Having been accustomed to reading aloud gives you confidence in that area. Last thing that has that language arts connection, yeah, you're going to build reading comprehension. You're going to continue to do that with narration, but you're going to switch. You're going to switch from oral or artistic narration to actually written narration because your child's ready to do that, ready to connect the story in a written format. So let's go now to some suggestions of books for this stage, things that you can read out loud. Let's start with books that are really good for that just fluent reader. Maybe they've only been fluent for a few months, a little while. This is a great one. Really, anything by Thornton Burgess is wonderful. These are old books, beautifully written. This one, The Adventures of Prickly Porky. The great thing about these books is they're in little stories, little short stories, okay? So 3 or 4 pages, not intimidating at all to that child who's just become fluent. Yes, it's a book, which is really cool to read a book, right? It gets you excited. But the stories are short. It's just not going to be intimidating. Next up, a great read aloud to share would be The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. E.B. White is better known for Charlotte's Web. Everybody knows that one. But I love this book because it's such a cute story. It addresses something that children in this kind of age tend to deal with, and that would be a lack of social confidence, feeling awkward. Yes, Trumpet of the Swan absolutely addresses that in such a cute way. Great little book. Anything by Beverly Cleary. The reason why I love these books, number one, yes, they are extraordinarily well written, and they still have some cute illustrations in them. But the great thing about these are written about a child's world from a child's perspective, with children doing children's things, okay? Including things that your child may have thought of but never tried before. It may not want to try. But in any case, Beverly Cleary is really good at connecting to your child. Great read-alouds. Here's another one, The Borrowers. Okay, everybody I think is more familiar with The Littles, but The Borrowers are older. I like the language better. The language is very, very descriptive, but not super, super over the top as far as, 5-syllable words, nothing like that. But just this beautiful language that she uses to write. This actually was my book back when I was in about 2nd grade, I think. I think it's a Scholastic. Yeah, it is. That I even put my name in it. But these are again wonderful. Now, going to the kind of the later phase of this era, this level here, where the child is reading very fluently and is fast approaching the level where you're going to move to the next level of books, right? Captain's Courageous by Rudyard Kipling. Yeah, everyone knows Kipling for Mowgli and the Jungle Adventures and, Rikki Tikki Tavi, that sort of thing. This is a fabulous book. This book starts to lead your child into that thinking more deeply about the story. This is actually about a young man who was tossed overboard in a storm off of a ship, right? And what happens to him? But it's got that deeper underlying tone to it that is so cool, and your child's ready for that. And the last one in this category I'm going to give you is Black Beauty. This is a great story. It's an old book. It's been around forever. Why? Because it's a great story. This book has got everything in it. It's got adventure and drama. It's got moments of great sadness and great joy. It's got it all, and it's beautifully written. Oh, the vocabulary and the language. It's just awesome. And there is, again, this underlying tone to it where there is more to the story than just the words on the page, and your child is ready to start delving into that. So those are reading suggestions for level 2 readers. Now we're going to move into some read aloud, both ideas about how that connects to language arts, and also some reading suggestions for level 3. So now we've come to that final level where really you're using read aloud to connect all the dots with your student. You're going to use challenging books that your student probably would not walk to the shelf and pick out for his or herself to read. You're going to pick books that are thought-provoking, because that's a connection that you're going to make at this point for your student with regard to the language arts skills. We'll get into that in just a second here. So let's talk about everything language arts that has to do with reading aloud at this level. First off, yes, you're going to continue to build writing skills. You're now getting into much more complex writing. The sentence structure is complex. The vocabulary is extraordinarily rich because you're reading great books, older books. Great way to solidify those writing skills, right? You're going to be promoting reasoning and morality in your child, thoughts about that, because you're going to be discussing everything you read. That's why you're reading it aloud. You're not just handing the book to your child. You're reading it aloud at this stage so that you can constantly discuss it. You can dissect all of these ideas that are being thrown forward by the author. I can't stress that enough, that discussion is just so vital at this stage. It's so tempting to hand books to your child to read. Don't succumb to that. Read them aloud with your student. Dissect them together. Among other things, you are going to teach your child the art of refutation. That is to say, the ability to argue rationally. Do we not need that in this day and age? Hello. Your student needs to form a position that they can stand on and then know how to defend that either in a written or a verbal form. Definitely. You're still going to use narration, but it's going to be very, very few instances of that. You might use it to sum up a book when you get done with it, written narration, because most of the time you're going to know exactly what your student thinks of what they're reading and their comprehension of it because you're discussing it, right? So another thing that gets built at this stage absolutely is things that your child needs for that SAT, ACT test wormhole, right? You're going to be teaching vocabulary, a very rich vocabulary. You're not going to need to teach a last-minute vocabulary course in high school. Absolutely not, because your student will be fully prepared. As far as the English portion of those tests, mostly what they are actually measuring is your student's ability to recognize a correctly written sentence, a well-written sentence that's written in a grammatical way, grammatically correct. Again, your student will already have that down. So you can just like check off the box that was for that ACT, SAT prep class. Your student's not going to need it. They're going to be prepared on the most difficult parts of the test, which have to do with things like reading comprehension, vocabulary, and all the basic language arts, right? So now that we've talked about the benefits, what shall we then read? Let me give you some suggestions for reading at this level. First book is going to be The Grapes of Wrath. Yes, Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is such an open look at humanity and how people react to the things that are going on around them that may not be good. It's just, it gets right to the core of what it means to be human. And the cool thing about this book is, after reading it, then you can watch the movie, which I think is from the 40s, if I remember rightly. I think it's got Gregory Peck in it, if I remember rightly. Anyway, you can watch the movie, and then your student can actually connect. Okay, what was in the novel that didn't make it into the movie? Did they change anything? Wow, a great exercise in actually looking at the movies from a literary standpoint. Yeah, that's a plus. Here's another great one. The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. This book is very thought-provoking. There is a definite tone of good versus evil. You watch the invisible man pretty much descend into a kind of insanity. Wow, very powerful. How about this one? 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. This is another one that very clearly at some point in the book, yes, it draws the line in the sand between good and evil, but for quite a while in many parts of the book, it's not entirely clear. Yes, Captain Nemo is evil, but yes, the other characters have to figure that out, and it's a process in figuring that out. Very, very good, thought-provoking stuff there. How about this one? The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is a book that was required reading when I was in high school, but most school curriculums don't even touch it any longer. But this is wonderful for understanding that post-World War I kind of thing and what the world was like just prior to the Great Depression and the stock market crash. Very valuable insights, deep stuff in here. And the last one I've got is, yes, this happens to be Great Expectations, but anything by Dickens, anything at all. Dickens really understands the human psyche, and he delves deeply into it, but maintains a wonderful story at the same time. Not to mention, his vocabulary and sentence structure is like, oh, it's just marvelous. 1,000 hearts to these. So I highly recommend Dickens. And I'm going to leave you with actually one suggestion that is not a suggestion, but actually a non-suggestion, if you will take it that way. Don't read aloud any Shakespeare. I'm just saying. Shakespeare always gets thrown in at this level. Shakespeare is a play. It was meant to be acted out on a stage. you cannot appreciate Shakespeare unless you have seen it acted out. You can't read it aloud and get anything out of it, or worse, read it silently to yourself. It's never going to happen. Instead, I highly recommend you can get movies that are absolutely just a recreation of Shakespeare's plays. They use his dialogue exactly. They use his stage settings and instructions, all of it. There's one, it's called, it's a Midsummer Night's Dream. For the life of me, it's from, I want to say the 70s. I can't remember more than that. I'll try to find the title and link it down below for you, which exactly film it is. And another one is The Hollow Crown. It's a series of 3 films based on 3 of Shakespeare's historical novels. Jeremy Irons in them. They're just wonderful, all 3 of them. And again, they're presenting Shakespeare exactly how Shakespeare intended it to be presented. So just saying, please don't read any Shakespeare. Let your student experience Shakespeare, but in the proper format. So that's it for levels 1, 2, and 3. Now it's time to wrap this up. So I'm going to leave you with a few thoughts about reading aloud. The first is that reading aloud can and should be done on a daily basis, okay? This is not one of those things where you can like wait a week and then pick it back up again, because number one, that's mean. I mean, have you never picked up a book that you just could not stop reading and put it down? So why would you make your children wait a whole week to find out what happens next? But also, your kids are going to lose the continuity of the story, and they may even lose interest because they just can't remember what's going on and who the characters are. So instead, just make it a daily part of your homeschool routine. In our homeschool, pretty much the first hour of every day, we read aloud. That's just what we did. It was part of our routine. The next thought that I want to leave you with would be that yes, you can read with all of your children together at the same time. You do not have to have 3 separate read aloud times. Now, when I say that, especially if you have a very large gap in your children's ages, like you've got a kindergartner and a high schooler, okay, in that situation, you're going to pick books that pretty much fall in the level 2 reading range. But then you're also going to spend some time reading to the younger and the older, reading with them separately, because there is that big age gap. Now in our family, there's just about 5 years between the oldest and the youngest, and that was never enough to keep us into the level 2 books all the time. We were generally reading kind of especially as the oldest one got to that, whatever the level the oldest one was at, I should say it that way. Whatever level the oldest was at, that is what we were reading. And it worked out just fine. In the high school years, because the youngest one had always been exposed to really good literature, it just wasn't much of a stretch for him to participate. No, he wasn't as involved in the discussion side of it, but still we kept it rolling pretty well. And I still read other things to the younger kids that were more for their level. But for our general read aloud, that was kind of the rule. So I want to say thank you for watching this week. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, right? And click the button to subscribe so that YouTube knows that this video has value and is worth putting at the top of the search results. Join me here next Wednesday for my next video, which will be how to finish your school year strong. Yeah, everybody needs that this time of year. So remember, here at Homeschool University, we have 3 key strategies. The first is to be practical. That's right. Use that common sense that God gave you. It's there for a reason. The next one is to be purposeful. Pray with and for your children and for your homeschool. And the last one is to be positive. You can do this because you are amazing.
Hey now, take a step outside and seize the day.